The human scale of a global crisis. Climate global warming.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a look at climate change, but probably not in the way you're used to. We're going to push aside the charts and graphs for a minute and instead see this through the eyes of people who are living it, right now, from the highest mountains on the planet all the way down to its sinking coastlines. All right, let's just dive right in. We're not going to start with data, but with a voice. This is Danny Arnold, an extreme mountaineer speaking from deep inside a Swiss glacier. And what he's saying, well, it just perfectly captures this feeling of immediate, tangible loss, something that's happening right now, right in front of him. And that loss really begins in what scientists call the cryosphere. It's a fancy word, but it just means all the frozen parts of our planet. Glaciers, ice caps, permafrost. And these places, they're kind of like the Earth's early warning system. It's where the changes are showing up first, and they're showing up in a big, dramatic way. So picture this. In the Swiss Alps, climbers are seeing this with their own eyes. There's this famous landmark, the Concordia Alpine Hut, and it used to sit right on the edge of the enormous Aletsch Glacier. But now you have to climb down 150 meters just to touch the ice. That's about a meter of ice lost every year on average. But lately, it's been melting way faster, like 2 to 3 meters every single year. The ice is literally vanishing beneath their feet. Okay, now let's jump over to Siberia, where a climate activist named Nikita Zimov is seeing something even weirder. The permafrost. This is ground that has been frozen solid for thousands of years. It's thawing, and as it melts, it is literally spitting out relics from the last ice age. We're talking 40,000-year-old mammoth tusks, the roots of ancient plants. It is a really bizarre sign of a much deeper and, honestly, a much more dangerous transformation. Yeah, this isn't just some weird archaeological find. It's what scientists have dubbed the permafrost carbon bomb. See, as that frozen soil thaws, microbes that have been dormant for millennia wake up, and they start eating all that ancient organic stuff. The problem is, as they do, they release massive amounts of carbon dioxide and methane. And this kicks off a feedback loop. More warming means more thawing, which means more gas release, which means, you guessed it, even more warming. The real fear is that this could become a runaway process, a self-perpetuating cycle that could accelerate warming way beyond our control. And to really get your head around the scale of this threat, just think about this for a second. Imagine all the trees, all the forests, all the plants on the entire planet. The amount of carbon locked away in those ancient frozen roots in the permafrost is actually greater than all of that combined. It's this enormous reservoir of greenhouse gases just sitting there, waiting to be released. So you might think, okay, melting ice at the poles, that's a problem for up there. But it's not an isolated event. What starts in the coldest parts of our world sets off a chain reaction, a kind of global domino effect that ends up impacting communities thousands of miles away. Let's go back to Switzerland. The melting permafrost there isn't just about losing ice. It's about losing stability. You see, that ice acts like a kind of glue, holding the mountains together. When it thaws, the rock becomes unstable. And in the village of Bondo, that led to a total catastrophe. 3 million cubic meters of rock came crashing down the mountain, destroying homes. There's a sign in the village that just says it all. The mountain has a fever. Now, halfway around the world, all that meltwater from glaciers contributes to rising sea levels. In Indonesia, there's a village called Pantai Bahagia, which translates to Happy Beach. It's an incredibly tragic name now because the village is sinking. A teacher there, Mustayati Ramatullah, talks about how the tide just regularly floods his classroom and kids are forced to sit there with their legs in the water. He's genuinely afraid the whole school will just be gone in a few years. And the dominoes just keep falling. Sometimes this chain reaction even leads to drought. This is what's happened to Lake Chad in Central Africa. Look at this. Back in the 1960s, it was this massive source of fresh water for millions of people. By 2007, it had lost over 90% of its water. That's not just an environmental disaster. It's a profoundly human one, sparking migration and conflict over what little water is left. So, all of these stories, all of these impacts, they're all building towards the central challenge that we are facing right now. And scientists have managed to boil it all down to a single, gigantic number that really defines the task ahead of us for this decade. 30 gigatons. That is the amount of annual greenhouse gas emissions we have to cut by the year 2030, just to have a decent shot at keeping global warming to manageable levels. It's a colossal number. So Where do we even begin to tackle something that big? Well, to help us make sense of it, scientists use a pretty helpful analogy. Imagine the whole task is like trying to cover a soccer field in green turf. The first section you lay down are the easy wins, things like ramping up renewable energy. That covers a small part of the field. Next come the known solutions, things we already know how to do, but just need to scale up, like stopping deforestation. That covers a much bigger chunk. And finally, you have the really tough patches, the challenging measures in heavy industry and farming. So here's the crucial point. When you add all of those known solutions up, we've identified ways to cut about 19 gigatons. That's roughly 2/3 of what we need to do. And that's the good news. The bad news, though, is there's still a massive 11 gigaton gap. And that gap is so incredibly hard to close because it requires us to change our most fundamental global industries. We're talking heavy manufacturing, long-haul shipping, large-scale agriculture, the really tough stuff.
But that gap, that's where human ingenuity really comes into play. So now that we've defined the size of the problem, let's look at the incredible portfolio of solutions. You can think of it as our toolkit for survival that are being developed to try and close that gap.
Okay, check this out. This is a fantastic example. The global demand for palm oil is responsible for just massive deforestation, especially in places like Borneo. But some scientists in Munich have figured out how to get yeast, yeast, to produce an oil that is chemically identical to palm oil. It's a biotech breakthrough that could, in theory, make chopping down rainforests for this one product a thing of the past.
So what about those really tough industries, like steel and cement? They pump out enormous amounts of CO2. Well, Norway is working on an incredibly ambitious project called Northern Lights. The plan is to literally capture CO2 right from the smokestacks of factories across Europe, transport it on ships, and then permanently inject it into stable rock formations 2,600 meters underneath the North Sea. And sometimes the most powerful technologies are the ones that have been right here all along. Simply re-wetting drained peatlands or bogs is a huge deal. They only cover about 3% of the land, but they store a whopping 30% of its soil carbon. And then you have projects in Sudan, where women are fighting back against the expanding desert by planting acacia trees. These trees not only hold the soil in place, but also produce a valuable product, creating a sustainable income for their communities.
So we have this amazing toolkit, right, with solutions ranging from high-tech labs all the way to ancient landscapes. But here's the thing. Having the tools is one thing. Actually using them is a whole different story. And that brings us to the final and most crucial point.
There is a really clear consensus among the experts on this. The window of opportunity we have to prevent the absolute worst outcomes is closing, and it's closing fast. They're all saying the same thing. The next 5 or 6 years are going to be decisive. This is not a problem for our grandkids to solve. The urgency is for right now, today.
And that's where this leaves us. From the melting Alps to the sinking villages of Indonesia, we've seen the very real human scale of this crisis. But we've also seen this incredible array of tools we have at our disposal to fight back. The science is solid, the solutions are there, so the question we're left with is no longer how we can do this, but if we will have.
Thanks for watching. Like, comments, and share.